Who pays the tariffs? Ronald Reagan often opined that government cannot tax business, so why try? His rationale was that business would only add the additional cost of their taxes to the price of their goods and services for their end-user customers to pay. Reagan advocated against tariffs for the same reason. If the U.S. taxes products imported from a foreign country, Reagan reasoned, those additional taxes would only be added to the price of the product and would ultimately be paid by our own U.S. customers. Many economists and politicians agree with Reagan's thinking. Now, I adored Ronald Reagan, and I considered him one of America's greatest presidents. I also admired the bombastic little Texas billionaire and 1992 candidate for president, H. Ross Perot, who warned that passage of the North America Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, would lead to a, quote, giant sucking sound, unquote, from manufacturing jobs being pulled out of the U.S. and moved to Canada and Mexico. NAFTA passed in 1994, and Ross Perot turned out to be right. Between 1994 and 2015, when Donald Trump was elected president the first time, U.S. manufacturing was decimated. So-called free trade turned out to be not so free after all, as U.S. trade partners around the world imposed high tariffs on U.S. goods coming into their countries. These tariffs were indeed passed on to their consumers, causing American-made products to be significantly more expensive than their comparable domestic products. Simply put, U.S. products were made prohibitively expensive by high tariffs, and foreign consumers quit buying our products, preferring to buy instead their own cheaper goods. Import tariffs were not the only reason foreign goods were cheaper than ours. Another reason was that their wages were much lower than ours, sometimes even bordering on slave wages, causing many U.S. companies to move their manufacturing plants to these foreign countries in order to take advantage of the low wages there. Europe and Asia were ravaged by World War II at the end of 1945, and the United States dominated world manufacturing throughout the 1950s and the 1960s. We could do no wrong, and our U.S. economy boomed, while the rest of the world lay in ruins. Throughout world history, the victors of war have always robbed and pillaged their defeated adversaries without mercy. The ancient Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Persians, and the Romans practiced unimaginable cruelties toward nations they conquered. Following World War II, however, the United States adopted a policy of compassion and benevolence consistent with our Christian values. We helped our former enemies recover from the war. We gave them billions and billions of American dollars and other resources to help them recover and rebuild their countries. Our military forces provided security and protection from our former enemies around the world at virtually no cost to them. A little bit of cost, maybe 2% of their GNP, which none of them have ever actually paid. We allowed these countries to tariff our products without reciprocation. They tariffed us, we didn't tariff them. Reciprocation. Without reciprocation, to give them a chance to recover economically from the war. We knew this practice constituted an unfair price advantage against our own goods and services shipped overseas, but we didn't care. We did it to help our world neighbors and because we could afford to do it. We were a rich country. Consequently, by the 1970s, our European and Asian allies, our former enemies, Germany, Japan, and Italy, were inundating our U.S. marketplace with their manufactured products while tariffing our products out of their own marketplace. In other words, they were selling Americans a whole lot more of their stuff than we were selling our stuff to them. With American help and generosity, Europe and Asia and all North America had become rich and prosperous just like us. The playing field had been leveled, but trade policies remained unchanged. Donald Trump, the brash young entrepreneur and world real estate developer, observed this disturbing development early on, and he warned Americans about it. By the time Trump ran for president in 2015, he was preaching loud and clear about it. Now in his second term as president, Trump is implementing tariffs on U.S. imported foreign goods to correct huge trade imbalances between the U.S. and its trading partners. He's also insisting that these rich and prosperous nations pay their fair share for the military defense provided to them by our military forces for the last 80 years. Like a lot of other people, I feel a little discombobulated by the idea of tariffs. My education and American free spirit has indoctrinated me to value free trade. When the Japanese started dominating U.S. automobile markets in the 1970s, I attributed their success to the manufacturing of better cars. More power to them, I cheered. Indeed, American manufacturing genius John Deming had taught the Japanese how to manufacture quality products after being laughed to scorn by American manufacturers. And I posited that the Japanese had simply beaten us at our own game. American car manufacturers were simply building crappy cars. To me, it was as simple as that. In fact, I owned a 1973 Ford at the time that was literally falling apart on me. Door handles falling off, seat cushions caving in. Free trade generally fosters competition and innovation. That's what I thought at the time. And it improves product quality and pricing for consumers globally. I was in favor of free trade back then and frowned upon protective tariffs. I have since come to understand that tariffs are much like sports handicaps, a mechanism put in place to level the playing field between weak and strong players. Handicapping is often used in golf, horse racing, sailboat racing, bowling, and so on. Handicapping is considered fair and appropriate between players of unequal skill and talent, but not so appropriate when competitors are nearly equal. Neither are tariffs. The contemporary narrative on tariffs is that tariffs are like Reagan's business taxes. The payments are made by the originator, but ultimately flow through to the end user. While this is true in most cases, it's not necessarily so. Consider, for example, the case of credit card fees. Banks issuing consumer credit card fees usually charge the retail merchant accepting the card a fee of about 3 to 5% of the sales charge. This fee is remitted directly to the bank by the merchant. The cardholder doesn't pay anything. In the early history of consumer credit cards, merchants were prohibited by consumer protection laws from passing this small fee back to the individual consumer. It was considered the merchant's, quote, cost of doing business. The premium a merchant must pay for access to this rather large group of premium buyers. Although the additional 35% cost of using commercial credit took a small bite out of the merchant's profit margin, this loss was more than made up by an increase in sales volume. Laws prohibiting merchants from passing credit card fees to consumers have been changed in recent years due to business lobbying efforts, and nowadays many retail merchants are choosing to do precisely that. Personally, I don't like this practice, and I choose not to pay these pass-along credit card fees. If a certain restaurant wants to charge me an extra fee for using my credit card or my debit card, I just go down the street and eat at another restaurant who does not charge me such a fee. It's my choice. I have a choice. Other customers who are richer or not as cheap as I am may not mind paying that extra fee, and they'll bite off and pay it just fine. They have a choice too. Merchants may also choose to accept credit cards or not. or whether to absorb the extra charges or to pass them on to their customers. It's their choice. They don't have to do it. Premium products and services are always cost more. This is the way of life. If you want a Cadillac, a Mercedes-Benz, or a BMW, you'll pay more than you will for a Chevrolet or a Ford. Rich people often choose to fly first class or sit in skyboxes at sporting events. Retail merchants expect to pay higher rent for space in major malls. Why? Because that's where the customers are. Wealthy countries also expect to pay premium prices for access to premium markets. The U.S. is a premium marketplace. Countries which manufacture goods for sale in our country expect to pay a premium price, or a tariff, for the privilege of selling their goods and services to our well-heeled U.S. consumers. When a country has rare minerals, oil and gas and timber and other valuable resources that other countries need, they raise their prices on those products without apology. I think the United States should do the same thing. I think cutting income taxes on our citizens and raising tariffs on our foreign trading partners is a pretty good idea, and I'm for it. Viva la Trump.